very good evening and a warm welcome to the program. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center. And tonight we'll be talking about zero discrimination. Today is Zero Discrimination Day, which is commemorated every the 1st of March, and this year it's on a Sunday, thank heavens. So in time for us to do the show. This particular episode is brought to you in collaboration with Uganet, Nafofanu, Hiraf, ICWEA, and TASO Uganda. Let's say it as it is. Once again, thank you for joining us. I'll quickly introduce our guests tonight in the studio, and I'll start at the very end. I'll start with Stella Kentusi, who is the Executive Director for National Forum of People Living with HIV Networks in Uganda. Thank you for joining us, Stella.
You're welcome.
And right next to her is Noreen Kaleba, who is the founder and patron of TASO Uganda. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And finally, right next to me is Ruth Akulo, who is Miss Y Plus 2020. You're a second runner-up for Miss Y Plus.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And I think we'll start our conversation with you. So Ruth was born with HIV, and she found out at the age of 9 that she had HIV, and that is when her story basically starts. Do you want to run us through that?
I was born with HIV, but when I was growing up, I faced stigma and discrimination, and friends around me when I was a young child. As you know, a young child, you don't really know much, and you could hear people telling others that this child has AIDS, and as a young child, you don't even know what it is, but later on you get to realize that it's really not something that is good according to the way they would say it. My friends were stopped from playing with me. Whenever anyone would come near me, they were told to stop coming near me. And when I was growing up, even in the community where I was, the guys who would come and approach me, someone would call them and tell them, you know what, that girl, she is HIV positive, she's going to infect you, so be careful as you go near her. So it's like you grow up knowing that you are a threat to the society, and it made me depressed deeply, and I started facing internal stigma within myself. I devalued myself. I saw myself as a useless person in the world. I felt so worthless according to the way how the society thinks of the people living with HIV.
Did family ever at any point explain HIV to you? At what point did you get any information about HIV that could then help you become the woman that you are today?
And I did not actually grow up with my family. I grew up at a children's organization, and they'll take me to hospital, and the counselors would tell me all about HIV. And I started also interacting with different people who are like me and would share information, would share experiences. So it really helped me get back on my feet to realize that there are people who are doing actually great things. People who are ministers, people who are running big organizations. So I was like,
look at you now.
So I really wanted that, and I'm a person who always dreams big, and I'm like, no, I have to start valuing my life and myself.
All right. Oh, Stella, what does stigma and discrimination look like? I know what I hear from Ruth's story, but what does it look like in general?
Stigma is basically devaluing the person, either because the person is living with HIV or is thought to be or associated with HIV. And this is followed by discrimination, which is either the unfair, unjust treatment of an individual because the person is living with HIV is thought to be. And when we talk of stigma and discrimination, we are looking at it at two different levels. There is what the person feels, what we call internal stigma. And what makes it internal stigma, we look at a number of variables: feeling ashamed, feeling worthless, feeling suicidal, blaming self, blaming others, someone feels guilty. Others even saying, I'm HIV positive, I don't think I should even have a family, I should have children, I should have sex. So those are some of the internal feelings that make it internal stigma.
Yeah.
But we also look at the external. External comes basically from the community, from the family, from the place of work, the place of worship. And this can come in the form of exclusions. You're excluded from the social gatherings, from family functions. If you're at the place of work, you are discriminated against, one cup here, one cup the other side. People are fearing to even promote you. And in the process, you'll find this person being discriminated because the person is HIV positive. But we're also considering those who are thought to be, and it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
I can give my personal testimony. I lost 2 brothers to AIDS, and my mom who looked after them they would not shake her hands. No, you are looking after your children, and since they have AIDS, so I think we are going to infect us. And yet she was HIV negative. So it is that environment that we are looking at. We are able to measure how much stigma actually prevails. Last year, 2019, we did a second national survey, stigma index survey, to measure how much, based on experiences of people living with HIV. We had 1,398 398 people living with HIV from all over Uganda. We covered 21 districts. We had around 62% women. And the stigma actually still remains an issue, especially the internal stigma, or the number of times people think that the internal stigma is brought out by the external. But we're able to tease out which one makes internal, which one makes external. The external stigma has reduced the exclusions, but stigma remains stigma, and once it is on board, then discrimination comes in.
I think that the shocking thing for me is, Ruth, you're 23.
Yes, please.
The thinking is that stigma has reduced so greatly in Uganda that by the time Ruth, who was born in the 1996, to her age now, you still experience stigma?
Right now, internally, no.
Externally?
But externally, there are people who still stigmatize people who are living with HIV.
So even doing interviews like this and people are watching, then that's another thing. Do you ever worry that they're now going to pick up and say, oh, meet me on the street and say, oh, that girl?
No.
Not anymore?
I managed to overcome that within myself first, because the moment you overcome stigma within yourself, you don't really care much about what other people think or see you. You are able to stand up for yourself, even if at one point I was walking by and someone told me, like, you're moving with the kaukai. So, and I managed to stood up to her and I told her, you know what, if we had to move together, someone may think you're the sick person.
Okay.
So, like, stigma is still there.
Noreen, it's 33 years since
Yes.
TASO was founded.
Yeah.
What's the journey been like? What do you see in the journey of stigma?
Looking back 33 years ago, I personally feel I have a sense of frustration, but I also understand why we haven't been able to make a dent on stigma. I will say that my late husband, Christopher, and I were stimulated to actually set up a support group which evolved into TASO, the organization we know today, but that stimulant was stigma. And my late husband was a teaching assistant at the University in Makerere, and I was at the time the principal of the School of Physiotherapy in Mulago. Despite that, when he was admitted in Mulago Hospital, just before he died, we were very stigmatized. The entire time we were in the hospital, hardly any of the healthcare workers touched him or actually walked into the room where he was admitted. So we were very we were very made aware very early that this disease, HIV, had the potential not only to kill the body, but more importantly, to destroy the spirit. So my husband and I said, the least we can do. And at the time, we were not even sure he would last long enough to ignite that spirit of let's stand up for ourselves. Because when he was diagnosed with AIDS, he only had a CD4 count of 1. And at that time, there were no ARVs. So he did not have the benefit of treatment. But despite that, we realized that the impact of the isolation and the whispering around you and the people making assumptions that because you have HIV, that impact was even graver than the illness itself. So, and I mean, fast forward, I'm glad that we started our movement, we started our activism, focusing on restoring hope and dignity of the person who is HIV positive as a basis of positive living. So, and what I'm saying right now is I feel a sense of frustration that 33 years down the line, we still have stories of stigma. We still have stories of people being discriminated. And in particularly, I'm very concerned about young girls and women.
Why do you think, and this is to any of you, that stigma is more to women and girls than it is to the men? You said that the 60% of the numbers that you found from when you did the research were women. 62% living with HIV/AIDS. Why are they feeling the brunt of the stigma and not the men?
I think the women tend to be blamed most for bringing the virus. When we go back to the health-seeking behavior, you'll find that the woman will go first before the man follows. We still have unfortunate incidents where a woman tests HIV positive and the man naturally assumes, I think I'm also positive. So she brings ARVs and the man takes half the share. But even those who find out that they are positive, they are not willing to go to the health facility to pick the drugs. So the woman will go for antenatal care, the woman will go when she's not feeling okay, so the health-seeking behavior of the woman is much higher compared to that of the men. So they will test first, and in the process, they will be blamed for bringing HIV to the marital bed, irrespective of who did that.
Because she found out first that she was HIV positive, she's the one who brought it, and therefore the stigma
and that is usually
follows
the
her.
Yes.
Even when we did the survey, most of the discriminatory remarks were against women. About 18% of the discriminatory remarks, because the person is HIV positive, were towards a woman, and just 12% towards a man. But again, you would find out that even those discriminatory remarks against a woman, the scolding, the verbal attack, the physical harassment, it was much more to a woman as against a man.
And maybe I would like to add that there is also a special category of women whose stigma is amplified by virtue of the fact that they may be living with a disability. Women living with disabilities are vulnerable to more stigma, because society says, "Oh, wow, that woman is living with a disability. So why was she looking for sex?" And if a woman might be a woman who sells sex for money, there are women who are in that category. Now, should they be found to be HIV positive, they are blamed even the more. That they are, they had it coming to them.
I mean, they weren't looking for it, and now they're the ones spreading it.
They are spreading it to all of us. And then you ask, they spread it to who? Because they go with the men or other women who may not be living with a disability. And the other one, women, again, if you are living with HIV, and all of us have been teenagers and have been adolescents, and you know that's a very difficult time of trying to negotiate relationships. Now, should you disclose to the person that you are talking with and who is approaching you that you are HIV positive? That is an added and amplified problem.
All right, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. Once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for staying with us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center. And tonight we're talking about zero discrimination. It's Zero Discrimination Day, the 1st of March 2020. And the point of this really is to raise visibility for the challenges of discrimination against women and girls, highlighting the importance of including women in all their diversity. That is, women living with HIV, transgender women, and sex workers, which Noreen spoke about. So very quickly, once again, my panel, Noreen Kaleba, Ruth Akulo, and Stella Kentusi, and we already started the conversation, but want to hear from people in the audience what they think about what we've been saying or take their questions. Yes, we'll start with you.
As Mama Noreen Kaleva mentioned, women and girls with disabilities, we face multiple stigma and discrimination in the communities. When, like, if they learned that you're HIV positive and you're a person with disability, automatically the whole family, even the community at large, they will question you how did you get HIV? If you know you are HIV positive, if you are disabled, why did you go for men? And the internal stigma, you feel like, why me in this world? You hate yourself. You have like suicidal thoughts. It happened to me. And when you go to seek for services, even the clients, the patients themselves, they will stop what has taken them there and start discussing about you. And you see like pinpointing at you. How did that one get HIV? A person with disability? And in fact, they start like whispering. Even the service providers. I want to call the service providers to be positive towards women and girls with disabilities, because we are human beings like any other person. We are women like other women. But what we go through is hell. We don't have love. Men go to women with disabilities at night. Very few women with disabilities who can go like in public with their lovers. I thank God I'm married. But my colleagues, many of them are not married. And when you become pregnant, you can't mention that I'm pregnanted by so and so. They will deny you. We have fatherless children. We lack information. When you look at sexual reproductive health rights information, we don't have it. So we don't go for family planning. You even fear to ask. We fear even to ask for condoms. I said, how will I start? Because the question will be, where is she taking it? Looking at different disabilities. You are blind and you want to go for services. You need a second person to take you where the services are. And you have no money because this person is supposed to go with you. We have the deaf women. You go to where the services are, but there are no sign language interpreters. Sometimes you cannot afford to go with your own interpreter. Sometimes you're illiterate. You don't know even sign language. You only use gestures. So I call upon the service providers, the hospitals, the private institutions, to have sign language interpreters to cater for the needs of the deaf women, to support those who are blind, and I will end up by data. There is no data concerning people with disabilities living with HIV
When you did the research, Stella, did you get any information on women with disabilities? In regards
Yeah,
to
well,
HIV?
among the respondents, we had about 30 people with a disability living with HIV. We have a network of in Masaka, so able to interview a number of them. Some of them were women, and indeed, as Beth has raised the issue, stigma among people living with a disability, but even among the key population, it is double, triple, sometimes 6 times higher. And this, therefore, we look at the intersectionality of stigma. Is it stigma because of HIV? Is it stigma because of other issues, orientation or the nature of work? So for people with a disability, especially the women who have disability and living with HIV, it is much higher, much higher. And that is what the study was able to find out.
Okay, let's take some more comments. There is a gentleman with a question or comment.
I'll start by giving a big thanks to Ruth, who has this courage of facing the whole world despite the tendencies of stigmatization and discrimination. And my question goes to Mama Noreen. Yeah, as we've heard mostly from my sister Betty, this multiple discrimination, we have found that people living with HIV, sometimes who are also persons living with disabilities, face this discrimination and stigmatization which comes from different directions, and most especially from people who are professionals, health professionals, who are the people we would all want to run to, who are the people having this fiduciary relationship with these clients who are coming before them. So my question is there any policy that is in place to ensure that those people who are mostly supposed to be icons in a society, when they are handling such clients, what precautions are they supposed to take, or in case it's not there, what plans do you have? Thank you very much.
I would like to respond to your concern by saying it's a real national concern, and it has not had due attention. But I would also like to say, I don't know if you were asking me in my capacity as the founder of TASO. Yes, I am the founder of TASO. I did found TASO. I led TASO and left TASO leadership in 1995 when I went to join Peter Piot to set up UNAIDS in Geneva. And so I left the frontline leadership of TASO, but I'm still the founder and the patron. So I influence policy in TASO. And I am proud to say that TASO has been a leader in initiating what you are actually saying. Betty here was actually trained and groomed by TASO as a counselor and groomed as a leader and a voice. But I agree with you. It is just a drop in the ocean with if you compare what we need. Okay. So we need a system, we need a policy, we need a Ministry of Health voice and drive for this to really translate into a national reality for people living with a disability.
All right. Very quickly, your question?
Okay, thank you, dear panelists. Mine is really a quick one. Stella, when you were speaking about stigma and discrimination, you mentioned that there is stigma that is internal and then the one that is external. My question is, can dealing with the social perspective about what living with HIV is like, can dealing with that perspective help to deal with internal stigma? Because my thinking is that the internal stigma that a person feels is mostly as a result of what the social perspective is.
Thank you so much for that. Just as I indicated earlier on, we have different perspectives on what causes the other. A number of people would say that we have more of internal stigma because of the external environment. But the stigma index survey that we concluded, when we compare 2013 and 2019, 2013 is when we did the baseline, when we had our first stigma index survey, we have actually found out that external stigma has reduced. the issues of discrimination, stigmatization, discrimination at family, community level and all that has reduced, except to the place of work. The place of work is still a problem that people fear to disclose, either to the employer or even to the co-workers. So the issue of whether external stigma causes internal, I think it also varies from individual to individual. You will find someone who, even where she has not disclosed the issue, has not disclosed to anybody, is actually dying internally. Has gone quietly, accessed services. We still have people who do not go to TASO or any other public health facility. They will go to a private health facility, will test, will start medication, but will still remain stigmatized, even when he or she has not disclosed to the community around. And we have a number of people who are feeling that. But then there are those ones who are stigmatized because of the community component. I think the story of Ruth is very clear, that the social perspective, the external environment is actually causing stigma on an individual. But generally from the study, we have more of internal stigma. We are feeling ashamed, I'm feeling guilty, I feel suicidal, I blame self, I blame others. And those internalized feelings is what we must be able to address. We may not really be able to say who causes the other. The most important thing is how do we address stigma so that this person can be free to freely access and utilize the available services.
Ruth, I just want you to weigh in a little bit on that, on what it's been like for you.
For me, I basically faced internal stigma, just as you said, and according to what Madam has said, that there is a time whereby people don't even know people don't even know your status, but you are afraid. You yourself, you are afraid of telling them. Like in school, people didn't know my status, but I myself, I was feeling guilty. I was feeling so devalued, me myself, like without people even knowing my status in school. So I reached a point whereby I even wanted to kill myself. That was in year 5, but people didn't know. But so it is up to us, people who are living with HIV, to first deal with internal stigma, because the moment you overcome that, you're able to overcome even the external stigma. And sometimes if you believe in yourself, people will definitely believe in you. And disclosing is one of the ways to break internal stigma. The moment I came out public, I felt like the weight that was inside me is lifted. I felt so free, and I didn't even care what the society thought.
Right, let's take another short break and we'll be right back. Once again, thank you for staying with us. Like I said earlier, we're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, and we're talking about stigma and discrimination. We just had one more question from the audience or comment, and then we'll get back to the panelists. Yes.
One of the things that I think also influence stigma in society is gender discrimination, where women are always, there's that system of the patriarchal system in the society, and women end up becoming the victims. The issue of promoting health-seeking behaviors in women and then not promoted in men. And there's also this issue of women who are in reproductive ages who go to give birth. They have to take a test whether they want or not. So in all sense, they actually get to know their status first. And when I always ask where is the interaction of men in that process as women are going to give birth, what system encourages men to go for mandatory testing? It is not there. And so they end up being victimized and stigmatized all the time. And I think even when we check our statistics, the women, the numbers of women who go for testing are higher than men. And I think the system I think we need to change our system, even promote, try to also encourage men to get involved in HIV prevention and testing and care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yours really wasn't a question, it was an addition actually to what you were saying earlier about women going to get tested first and hence the stigma falling mostly on them. How do we change the mindsets now?
Can I just speak from the perspective of what we hoped would happen 33 years ago? We hoped that with more information, because at that time there was scant, even the healthcare workers were scared, but they were not scared because they were being bad, but because they didn't know.
Yeah.
So we mounted a campaign, and I thank the Ugandan government. We stimulated that campaign, and it was taken up by Ministry of Health, and general information went out. So that, and that information going out helped to ease a little. It did not eradicate. So information is important, and we must give correct, scientifically correct information to people so that they know they can deal with their personal prejudices. That's one. The other one, which I think we hoped would happen, but hasn't quite happened equitably, was that as people tested positive, their families would be with them. They would move with them. The voice of positive living would not be carried exclusively by the person who is HIV positive. Like I give an example. When my husband was tested positive, I did not test HIV positive, but I joined his voice, and so we were together as a family. Today, when you hear the voice of positive living, you only hear it from people who are HIV positive. It is so hard to sustain that when your family is not with you. So the question I'm asking, where are the Ugandan families in promoting this whole concept of positive living?
When we're speaking about HIV, and I know one of the other issues we wanted to tackle was also TB in regard to stigma and discrimination. Do these suggestions you've given, what you wanted to happen 33 years ago, does it cut across for TB as well?
It cuts across for tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And where the family has been involved, because you know we are talking about living with a chronic illness. Even today, in the day where we have access to treatment, the family has, in whatever format, it may not be your mom and dad or your immediate biological family, but the family of people who care about you. And when we set up TASO, it was so difficult in the beginning to stimulate family involvement. We defined ourselves as the family. And when you go to TASO today, one of the values they carry, they continue, is the family spirit. Now, because we are talking about living with a condition, you need family, you need someone who cares, you need someone who will be happy when you share with them and say, I am taking my medicine religiously. Or someone who will say, I fear there might be something that isn't happening. So that's tuberculosis and any other illnesses that you have to deal with that is chronic, you need the support of the family and the community.
We mentioned, I had the mention of the government at a point and the role it played. What else can it do? And also, where is the civil society? I see TASO, I see all of the organizations I've mentioned that we're working with in collaboration for this particular episode. But what more can we do?
I think the issue of mindset, that change that we want, we may need to go with what the Ugandan government came up with, the multi-sectoral approach. It is not a single person-centered approach. When we talk of messages, for instance, we no longer see the messages. We're supposed to put up the messages on how HIV is transmitted, how it is not transmitted, issues of demystifying the misconceptions and all that. We're supposed to do that. It can't be just government. It has to be everybody, starting from the home, because that is where most of the messages come in. Civil society will come together. government will come in, the donors will come in. But we must be strategic in a way that we have these messages very well sectioned, that we have them out at that particular time and age appropriate. You will not be surprised to hear someone saying that people living with HIV are sick. And I keep on saying, sick people are in hospitals. They are in bed, they are at home. We have people who are normal health and productive. So we cannot continue saying, oh, you know, that person is sick, that person is sick. That will be part of the mindset. Yeah. 2, when we did our survey, the survey targeted people living with HIV, but we could not get a certain caliber of people. I don't even know how we are going to reach them. They are highly educated, because we had more of community people would belong to our member networks, and even those who would be free to go to these public health facilities, but also other, you know, non-for-profit ART clinics, where someone is free to go and we did the exit interview. So where are we finding the people who are in our offices, who are doing the businesses, who are educated, those ones who do not wish to be seen entering this kind of health facility will call, where can I go? So we need to have it well packaged, multi-sectoral as we were, from the faith-based component, from us, the networks of people living with HIV, from the cultural institutions, from the line ministries, from Uganda's commissioner coordinator.
Laws and policies.
The laws and policies must be able to be palatable to the people, so that we don't have the stigma and discrimination driving the virus underground. We are targeting ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030, and this has to be done by everybody, including you, the media. Everybody must come on board.
We're doing our part.
Yes, we're doing our part. And we did a lot as Uganda without any money. Yeah. Now we have some money, although the money has reduced a bit. We can still get back to our drawing board.
But you mentioned the law. We do have an HIV prevention law. We must talk about that one.
Yes. So what I'm going to ask is that, Ruth, you start closing us off with your closing remarks. What do you want to take from this conversation?
For me, what I suggest that if we people who are living with the virus, if we can come out, prove to the public, and we break the stereotype that is around HIV, because still in the society they think that if you're HIV positive, there are certain things that you cannot do. You're taken to be weak. But if we come out and we prove to them that, you know what, I can study and I can graduate and I can be a businesswoman, I can be a president. So it's up to us also to really prove to these people that, you know what, that what you can do, I can also do.
Okay,
that's what I think.
You said president, which 20
of Uganda.
2021. Norman?
I think I just to thank you for the opportunity for us to reflect with a lot of appreciation that government led and we accompanied the government the process of developing a law. A framework, a policy and law framework that guides our programming around HIV and AIDS. And we do have a law on our books, but that particular law has elements in it that have huge potential to perpetuate stigma and discrimination. And we tried hard to convince our legislature to take those elements. It is a clause number 43 and 18. Yes, and basically from my perspective, those clauses, one, refer to disclosure that the healthcare worker can disclose my zero status if they judge that I'm hesitant or I'm taking too long to disclose, and they can decide who to disclose my zero status. That's one. The other one is intentional transmission. It is a clause that relates to intentional transmission, and that clause in particular really puts the woman in danger, because as my colleague here said, she's the first one to be tested because she's the one who will go for antenatal clinic. And when she returns home, and should there be some domestic problems, the man can actually sue her. She can be sued. And the HIV test will be the evidence that will be produced in court. And do you see how that one also is potentially stopping people from testing? Because if the evidence against which I will be convicted is my HIV test, what is the incentive for me to test? Why should I test?
Or why should I disclose?
Why should I disclose?
Yeah.
And yet we had done so well. People were voluntarily testing, voluntarily informing, and with support. Because one thing which we also have put our eyes off is the support, the counseling that goes with making a decision. Who should I tell, and how should I tell them, and when should I tell them, including the intention when I start on treatment. It's also important to have someone I have told who will help me. So those clauses.
Conversation happening on the clauses?
Yes, it is happening. Civil society, I think, will never let this issue go. And there is a constitutional petition so that it is scrapped out of that. We don't want to have a law that is counterproductive. It has some good clauses. Yes. But it is that can actually water down the very good intentions of that law. Right. But beyond that, we've also worked very closely with the Uganda AIDS Commission, and we have the first ever national anti-HIV stigma and discrimination policy. So it is that is pending dissemination that we hope will also support. Okay. But just as part of my concluding remarks, for me, I work with people living with HIV. And we want to have a healthy, productive population of people living with HIV in Uganda. We are talking of about 1.3 million Ugandans. Yep. And we want to see this population of people living with HIV being able to do this work in a stigma-free environment. As we mark our day, today 1st March, Zero Discrimination Day, it is the discrimination that is actually bringing us down when it comes to managing the epidemic. And it is the role of everybody. Let us not look at people living with HIV as on one side, and then we have the general population on the other. Because in Uganda, either you are living with HIV or you are affected by HIV. And it takes the whole village, it takes the whole family, it takes everybody, which brings us to the nation that we can actually achieve it if we put our head to it.
All right. Thank you all so much. Just one question as we close. Do you ever feel that we think we've done so well in the fight against HIV that we've taken a backseat?
Yeah, and that actually comes in with the complacency that people have been talking about. Yeah. And it goes back to where are the messages? Move all through. We think we've done
so well.
And in the process we've taken a back seat. Yeah. Fortunately, I think the President of the Republic of Uganda recognized that. Okay. And he's able to say, I think we did so well, we took a back seat, and now the infections are coming up. We are talking of about 970 new HIV infections per week. So it is time now. Per week. And most of that goes to the girls. So it is time now for everybody to get up. Let us not look at people living with HIV. Let us look at everybody in the country.
All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much to my panel and to the studio audience that has been quite active. Again, this show was done in collaboration with Uganet, Nafofanu, Hiraf, ICWEA, and TASO Uganda. That brings us to the end of it. Thank you for watching. NTV Weekend Edition is coming up next.